Well, good afternoon. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I want to welcome you all to the House Regulated Industries Committee. We have a bill in front of us today, and this is going to be for discussion only today. This would be Senate Bill 254. And for the benefit of the committee that hasn't read this bill, I can tell you the gist of it. Hemp-based drinks are currently sold under the Department of Agriculture rules and regs. They can go up to 10 milligrams. The senator put in a bill to drop that to 5. It was amended in the Senate to move them down to 0. And that's what came over to us. So that's what we'll be dealing with today. The good senator, I see him in a welcome, Senator, our counterpart over in the Senate. I understand you had a meeting this morning and you're still working on some other language. But since you're the author of the bill, we want to welcome you, let you say what you need to say, and because you've got more important things, I'm sure.
I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to be here, Mr. Chairman, and I thought I'd just sort of rehash what you just said there. We passed the United States Congress passed the Farm Bill back in 2018. It essentially legalized.
Is that mic working?
Is that all right?
I don't know. Is it working?
Okay. I don't know if you can hear me or not, but I'm not touching anything. So anyways, it essentially legalized hemp, which is a cannabis plant. Marijuana is one strain and hemp is the other. The only difference being the concentration of the THC. And Delta-9 is the portion of it that has the psychoactive components, has THC. There was a limit put on it at 0.3% of THC by dry weight. And I think they were really thinking about smoking it like a joint, and at that concentration would not get you high in any way. There was talk about all the uses of the product that included rope and blue jeans and other things, but as it evolved, the only thing it's being grown for is to extract that THC from it in a concentrated form. The dry weight is very minimal, but they're getting that out. It becomes a substance very similar to honey, and that is used to mix in a variety of products, including gummies and now hemp beverages. Different states are imposing different limitations because the federal limit is just it can't be more than 0.3% dry weight. And they will literally take a can and they will boil it to evaporate it down to like a rosin or powder and find out is it 0.3% or more. But if you dilute it from that concentration into a 12-ounce can, you will have over 1,000 milligrams of THC, enough to get pretty much everybody in this room high. So different states have been imposing more restrictions than just this 0.3%. And it is very common to be 10 milligrams per 12-ounce container, 10 milligrams of THC. So that's a lot less than the feds would allow, and I think it was really probably an unintended consequence of the Farm Bill that hemp was going to be used to be essentially legalizing marijuana. In the fall, we delegated last year's bill. I don't remember, I think it was 464. That sort of set up the regulatory powers in the Ag Department here in Georgia. Tyler Harper has regulatory control of the distribution of hemp products. And he came out with rules and regulations in the fall, and the original regulations said hemp beverages would be permitted. It would be 5 milligrams per can, 12-ounce can, and no larger portions than 12-ounce cans. He also limited gummies to 10 milligrams per gummy, no more than 150 milligrams per package. So you could have up to 15 of them. Now some of the concerns are what happens if you eat more than one or two or something, what might happen. he took public input, and the industry came back and said, nah, you're restricting us too much. We would like to sell larger portions, we would like to sell more, and so he put out new rules and regulations in January that allowed you to go up to 10 milligrams per 12-ounce beverage, and it allowed you to have up to basically 300 milligrams in a package of gummies, still 10 per unit. So I saw that, and at about the same time this discussion began that they're creating synthetic THC from Delta 8, Delta 10. You may have heard some of these other things. Well, I didn't really know that that made so much difference, but it sounded like a way to circumvent the 0.3% by coming up with different compounds that still got you high. We had another bill in the Senate that addressed that made the bill apply to total THC concentration, not just Delta 9, which is the naturally occurring THC. So my bill, I got to thinking that this is getting ahead of us a little bit. We don't really know all ramifications or consequences, and we're having a new industry that's about to burgeoning industry where people are wanting to sell these products, and I'm not so sure that was the intent when we went back and passed the Farm Bill. So all my bill did was roll it back to the original 5 milligram 12 ounces, and it limited to 150 milligrams per package of gummies at 10 milligrams each. And then it limited some, the tinctures, they call them, that's the oil that you put in your mouth. I don't know that anybody's even selling that or doing that now. And my thought was, let's put the brakes on a little bit here. Let's pump it, and let's make sure before we start making this commonplace and selling it all throughout the state, that we know it's safe. And part of that comes from my perspective as an attorney, that I realize that there's two types of DUI. DUI alcohol, DUI drugs. And DUI alcohol, we all know, is 0.08 or above, and it's measuring the concentration. When we regulate, and our three-tier system does a fabulous job of regulating alcohol, we have to designate on the packaging what's the percentage of alcohol in it, what's the proof, how intoxicating is it, so that drinkers can pace themselves and understand, what the effect is going to be on them. And law enforcement says if you have more than 0.08 in your bloodstream, then you're impaired. You're not a safe driver to be in public. Drugs is a whole different deal. To be DUI drugs, all you have to have is the presence of certain drugs in your system. And there's a number of them. You can imagine cocaine, heroin, etc. But THC is one of those. So if you have any amount of THC in your blood and you're driving a vehicle, you are DUI drugs. So I got to thinking, heck, these people, you can go get you a 6-pack of beer, and you can kind of gauge, you can drink 2 or 3, supposedly 0.02 per beer or drink or glass of wine, and you can know when to cut it off before you drive. With these beverages, I got worrying that people wouldn't realize if you drink one of them, you're going to be DUI if you get stopped and tested. And also worry about drug tests in the workplace. That THC stays in your system much longer than alcohol does, and people might be having consequences on the job. So my thought was, let's pump the brakes and slow this down a little bit before it goes crazy. At the same time, some other states are putting tight restrictions. Kentucky also went to 5 milligrams. South Carolina has a bill trying to limit the 5 milligrams now. California banned it totally. Of all places, California, 0 THC in beverages. Most every state says no mixing of THC and alcohol either in a beverage. Texas is now the governor of Texas, or lieutenant governor, says that's their #1 priority this session is to ban THC beverages. So you can see pushback as they're becoming more common. I had some samples delivered to me to show different products, and there's a wide variety. And in Georgia, there's a company in Beaufort that's making them at 5 milligrams. We also have Scofflaw Brewery here that makes, I don't know if they make 5, I know they make 10, they make 25 milligrams. I've got in my office some samples that are as big as 750 milliliters, and it says it's got 60 or more milligrams of THC in it. We had some information presented to us in committee that shows that basically a 5 milligram portion of THC is equal to 2 beers, the impact on you, or 2 glasses of wine or 2 shots of liquor. These 10 milligrams would be like drinking 4 beers. And of course they go up from there. That's what was described to us. So I present the bill on the floor, and it limits, you know, as I told you, the portions, the number of gummies you could get, and it limited at 5 milligrams, and we got amended on the floor. And we had the amendment carried that prohibited THC beverages altogether. Now, it puts us more like Texas and California. Let's just slam the brakes on till we figure out what we're doing, because you're kind of saying to your public, these are okay, these are safe, if we're allowing the wide distribution of it. I thought initially that they were trying to kill the bill. I voted against that amendment because I'm like, y'all didn't tell me about it. You got to remember that the Senate floor operation is a whole lot different than the House. You know, we don't have structured rule and all that kind of stuff. It's a wild, wild west, unless we engross a bill, and those are generally just ethics type bills or tax bills. So this bill came out. I didn't know about the amendment, or thoroughly I'd heard some discussion, and so I voted against it, but it passed, which stripped that out of the bill. So now the Senate position is 0. So after the amendment passed, the bill comes up, and it passed 42-14. So I think that's a pretty strong indicator of the sentiment of the Senate, is that we are very hesitant or cautious about the safety and the sensibility of widely distributing these beverages. And that's where my story ends, and Mr. Chairman, your story begins with the whatever substitute and whatever the pleasure of the House is going to be on this. And I'm, of course, always...
Let me open this up to Clay. I know you've got other things that you are probably pressed to get to. Any of the committee members have any questions for the author of the bill? Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Callister, just a quick question. You've got a lot of experience in these DUI cases. How does law enforcement test for THC?
Test.
So it would have to be, so it's no on the road?
Yeah.
They have to take them into a lab or somewhere to draw blood?
They take them to the hospital and draw their blood, and what, usually they smell weed, you know, and so they want to do that, or else there's no alcohol in the car, and they pass what they call an alpha sensor, a field screening test that shows no alcohol, but they're acting impaired, and so they'll ask to do that. The craziest story I had recently, and that's a small percentage of my practice, but I had a woman that's even older than me that called up and had a DUI. She had rolled into a car in an exit from a drive-through at a Wendy's. She didn't remember the collision. Wakes up in the Oconee County Jail. They said, you know, you're DUI. They had done a blood test on her. She said, well, I ain't DUI. I had 1 glass of wine before I went to bed. I have trouble sleeping, so. And I'm like, well, great, this is going to be one of the easiest cases I ever defended. As soon as that blood test come back, we're going to prove she wasn't, that 1 glass of wine wouldn't get you more than about a 0.02 or 0.03. Well, lo and behold, the blood test came back positive THC. So now it's a DUI drug case. And I said, Ann, you didn't tell me you were smoking weed. You know, you left that part out. She said, Bill, I ain't smoked weed since college. I wouldn't know where the hell to buy weed. She said, I said, well, you got THC in your system. She said, it has to be those gummies. And she had bought some gummies that were legal to sell. You know, THC, hemp, derived gummies. And I said, you better go get me a package of them and see then. And she bought them literally within a few hundred yards of my law firm. And they say on there, you know, Delta 8, Delta 9, whatever. And I'm like, golly. I ended up, by the way, winning that case because I don't think that's why she was impaired. But it was an interesting situation. It brought it home to me that this is a concern.
Thank
All right, any other questions from the committee? Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, I'm just curious, what brings this bill? Why now?
Because we never had hemp-derived THC until after 2018. So it's a new phenomenon, and these drinks really just, as far as I know, just in the last 12 to 24 months. and the gummies. And, you know, they were talking about all the useful benefits of the hemp. But from my analysis, all of these products, this isn't medical marijuana. You can go get medical marijuana if you got a medical problem now. We've legalized that, you know. This is not medicinal in my view. People will tell you that's why they're taking it, is for the THC, and it's to get high. And as I ask the questions in my committee, everybody's kind of ultimately says, well, it might help you sleep, it might help you joint pain or whatever. But if y'all remember Alan Peake back in the day, when we had the first medical marijuana deal, it was nothing but CBD. That's all he said, cannabidiol oils. There was this product over in the UK that helped the seizures with children that had zero THC. Then we went to low THC oil that originally was 5% or less, which was more than the rest of the country. But so anyway, that's why, because it's a new phenomenon. It's nationwide. It's not just us, because the federal government created a loophole to have legal THC, even though THC is still a Schedule I substance under federal drug laws. If it's from hemp, it's 0.3% or less, you're not going to get prosecuted for it.
Mr. Chairman, can I do a follow-up?
Certainly.
I asked that question, Senator, because anything could put us under influence.
True.
Anything. And we're not taking, I've been up here 9 years. I don't see us taking actions on anything else that can influence any Georgian. Alcohol, cigarettes, right? And so this bill, in my humble opinion, Mr. Chairman, I can't support a bill that where you're just saying, hey, this is bad, but you're not giving this body data, right? Let's compare it to alcohol. Let's compare it to smoking. Let's compare it to everything else that's bad in our society. And we're not bringing forward legislation that will impede those industries. I just see this as a manufactured idea that's going to hurt and harm CBD stores. It's going to hurt and harm those who are not under the influence. They're not getting high, right? They're not. So I just don't see it, Senator. I hear you, and I hear your presentation, but I'm reading this legislation, Mr. Chairman, and I'm Googling how many infractions in Georgia where there's a citation, and majority of them are around alcohol.
Sure.
Fatalities around alcohol, Senator. So if we're going to do something in Georgia, and we're not Oregon, we're not Iowa, this is Georgia. This is Georgia. I'm just talking about Georgia. And so you have said since 2018, so I'm going to Google, since 2018, how many infractions in Georgia, and compare that to all the other things that are in our society. And I just don't see the validity of Senate Bill 254.
Okay. Well, you might realize that marijuana is illegal in Georgia. THC is illegal in Georgia. I have college kids in Athens that vape THC, and if they get caught with a THC vape, that is a felony crime to possess THC. If they've got a bag of pot, less than an ounce, that's a misdemeanor crime. Our state has determined that marijuana is illegal. Were we right? Were we wrong? There are a lot of states that have legalized it. We haven't. And it is a crime here to do it. It is a loophole to that crime. The exact same ingredient in marijuana, the Delta 9 THC, is a crime if you got marijuana and not a crime if you got a hemp product. And that's the loophole that this is closing. And you say about the intoxicating. That's why I'm going for this 5 milligrams. Let's find a level that is not intoxicating so that you're not getting stoned by drinking the beverages unless you want to, and then drink you a 6-pack of them, you know.
Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you, Chairman. Senator, I appreciate you bringing the legislation. It hits home when you go into gas stations around your community and you see that they've theoretically become basically a drug dealing house. There's no guardrails. There's nothing Your legislation is trying to provide some framework so these products can be sold, but right now it is the Wild West out there. And when a shipment comes in that day, you see people lined up outside to be the first customer to try the new product. You see kids taking this stuff. I caught my son doing this. I know a kid I coached in football that's got schizophrenia from doing this stuff. There needs to be some guardrails, and I'm not saying that alcohol is any better, but just having it as the wild, we put proof, like you said, on alcohol. We put confinements on beer, how much alcohol's in them. It's not the end of the world to put some framework around it, and I appreciate you.
Thank you. And we do prevent the sale of alcohol to people under 21 too, and this as well. It's just, is it adequately enforced or not?
Mr. Williamson again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a technical question, Senator. We're talking about THC. One's derived from an illegal product, which is marijuana, and the other one's derived from the hemp, which has a loophole through the federal farm bill, or the pathway through the federal farm bill. How does one know, scientifically, can someone determine whether or not the THC in these beverages is actually derived from hemp as opposed to marijuana?
Not easily at all. I'm told it can be, but
Okay.
it is a very lengthy, more complicated chemical analysis to find the essentially genetic roots of it. Because you're dealing with the same plant, cannabis, and it's the same molecule, delta-9. I don't know if that's a molecule or isomer or whatever it is, but it's the component in there is the same thing.
And just a follow-up question, did I understand you to say that 5 milligrams is analogous to drinking 2 beers with a regular alcohol content?
That's what the toxicologists say.
So it is an intoxicating beverage.
And that's, I think, what people are now trying to refer to them as. Alcohol and hemp-infused beverages are both intoxicating beverages. You're just going to get drunk or get high. They're both intoxicating.
Well, if it is an intoxicating beverage, does it not make sense to collect an excise tax on it just like we do alcohol? If it's competing for the alcohol space, to collect excise taxes on it and regulate it appropriately for all the reasons that Chairman Carpenter articulated.
That's a separate policy issue, but that is what we do. We call them sin taxes, and it is very analogous to alcohol, so it certainly would make sense to do that if that's the will of the legislature.
All right. Do we have any other questions from any of the committee members of the author? To my good friend, the senator, I want to thank you for appearing today. Appreciate your analogy on things, whether I agree with all of them or not.
Okay.
But
I'm looking forward to continuing to work with you.
I
as you
think
work
we will
this through
have
your body.
some other discussion. One of the issues that wasn't in the bill, but, you know, these CDB products are sold pretty well everywhere, except in the most controlled situation, that would be package stores. At some point, if we move forward, and I know the issues of dealing with this over in the Senate, one of the things would that not be the better place to add the package stores to wherever else, since that's the most controlled place to sell?
Right. Yeah, I look forward to our continued professional discussion as this goes through the process, but yes, when you're selling intoxicating substances, it makes sense to have them in a controlled environment like that. On the other hand, it seems to me the Senate view is to restrict the distribution of these products as much as possible. Our current posture is to not allow them, period. So proliferating the sales by giving more outlets and sales outlets is kind of contrary to what I'm perceiving the Senate position to be. And it's new. It's new to all of us. So I don't know that everybody's even really thought it all through or comprehended. I personally had no concept how many milligrams of THC would fit in a 12-ounce can. I mean, I'm sitting there thinking we're talking 5 and 10, that, well, maybe some of these other products, 25 and 50 is the most you could get. But when I was taught by the brewer, no, this 1,065 milligrams is how much you get from 0.3% in a can. I'm like, Lord have mercy. Because any scientist or doctor or rehab counselor is going to tell you that's 10 times or more than your body could handle. I mean, you'd be in fetal position if they fully dosed it, let's say. So who knows? It's our policy decision to figure out, and I'm learning as I go. and I know that we all are. And so I'm not opposed to the Senate position of let's pump the brakes on this till we figure it out, or maybe we should study it a little bit. But your point, well taken. A place that sells intoxicating beverages, this fits that category. It just doesn't have alcohol in it.
Very good.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate
Any
you,
other questions of the author of the bill? Senator, thank you for coming.
Thank you, and we're
Always
let's
good.
continue
Always
talking.
good to have you in this committee.
It's
I'm
rare.
just glad I hadn't had to appear
Likewise.
in one of your committee this year.
Well, I'm sure that's maybe a nice little breather.
It is.
But I just sent you a picture of us in a happy time.
Amen. Thank you, Senator. All right. We're going to take just a momentary break. We have some technicians that are going to replace this microphone over here so we don't hear the scratchy noise. I'm going to preface her testimony. I think I've talked to a lot of the members here. The federal Congress since the 1930s has classified marijuana in the same classification as heroin. For whatever the reason that's been, there has been no will in the U.S. Congress, probably less will to do this than it is to pass a balanced budget. But because of that, we have citizens, whether it be for medical use or otherwise, that they want the product. And that's been a concern. So if we're going to have a problem, if there's going to be a product, then we need to put structure into this. I will tell you that I have looked into putting a excise tax on this. I met with the Revenue Department as late as this morning and basically have pulled the plug on that for this year because according to Revenue, it would cross about 3 or 4 different code sections, and they've asked me to have a ad hoc committee this summer to work on this and to do it right with an excise tax. So that's going to limit as to what we're going to be doing in this committee. Catherine Russell, she's the attorney from Ag, she's going to, if you don't mind, give us a little bit of take about the CDBs as opposed that's regulated by the Ag Department well, you don't even have to get into the medical marijuana, but into this stuff, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon. Catherine Russell with the Department of Agriculture here in Georgia. I'm the Commissioner's Director of Policy. Mr. Chairman, I do want to thank you for allowing us to come into the office and to have an open door. So we've had a series of conversations with people in the industry and who would potentially be impacted by the version of the bill that was sent over from the House and the substitute that would look at some excise taxes. And we've really enjoyed being part of that conversation. It's really important to us. So I'll tell you kind of where the department is. Chairman Calster was correct in his recount of all of the efforts that we've made to establish rules and regulations over the past year. Right now, we've got about 90 pages of rules that have come out by the department that are in some ways onerous, right? A lot of the industry participants would tell you that. One of the things that we are really considering when we're looking at legislation this term is that market participants have just received the latest round of rules, which they knew that were coming, but they weren't established until the second week of January. And so everyone has been making efforts to conform with what we've established. They need the barriers that they need to take mind of, and all the different qualifications that they must have. And so the industry is really, it's new. It's adjusting to recently established regulations, and so there's been a lot of movement. So one of the things that we really are trying to share with people in the legislature is that we would like to have a little bit more time to go ahead and start moving forward with a little bit of data, a little bit of research, and how we can go ahead, how what we already have in place is going to impact the market before we start changing things again. I can talk about some other things, but I just thought I'd start there.
Well, let's open this up for questions and to any of the committee members. Questions from the committee. Chairman Jasper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, just on I guess, have you seen Chairman Powell's sub?
I have. I don't have.
Or just have you seen it? I think you'll know this answer, but you know, in his sub, it just talks about Delta 9 THC. Mm-hmm. There have been other committees, and they talk about all these other variants of Delta whatever. Mm-hmm. I mean, what prevents a producer from putting Delta whatever besides Delta 9 in there, in this?
In the substitute?
Yeah,
I don't believe that there is any restriction on continuing to sell like a Delta 8 or an HHC beverage.
Yeah. There's not. Okay, that's what I'm curious about. It just seems like this said they can do it if that, but it doesn't really address all the other things that we hear about.
And we discussed this for a little bit. The problem, we go back to kind of the crux of the Senate Bill 33 that Dr. Kirkpatrick was working on. Identifying what we consider to be an intoxicating cannabinoid isn't as simple as one would expect. Also, they can continue to evolve. People, the minute that we name them all, this is a chemistry game. Somebody within 10 days will have the next kind. And so one of the things that we've asked for is to have a study committee over the summer. I think we would like to have one in both the House and the Senate so that we can really clarify what the state's position will be on those different intoxicating cannabinoids, which ones count, which ones don't, because they don't have the same type of effect. And that's not really anything that our legislature has considered so far. I believe that the substitute speaks to Delta 9 because there's a framework in place to address that.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McCollum.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming in today. I'm new to this committee, so I have a couple questions. You might not know them or not. So I'm not real adept to exactly how this all took place. So apparently in 2008, the Federal Agriculture Committee, they did a loophole and made the hemp products come to how they are now. And then we put it in the Georgia Department of Ag's court as far as how to regulate it. And I guess my question is, can you walk us through how once it was put to the Department of Ag, how you kind of, I don't know, do y'all regulate it, or, you know, just kind of those steps, if you don't mind?
Sure. So the 2018 Farm Bill at the federal level made some changes and allowed for hemp, the definition of hemp, to be carved out of the definition for marijuana, so that anything that's below 0.3% delta 9 THC on a dry weight basis is considered separate and apart. It's no longer a controlled substance. I believe that the intention there was to see industry expand in what you would expect for like industrial hemp. So think like hempcrete or like wood flooring and that type of thing. Some people would say that in so doing that the feds created a loophole in that they didn't address all the other cannabinoids. So that we'll just put a pin in that.
Right.
So in response, in 2019, the Georgia legislature passed the Georgia Hemp Farming Act. Now, if we did not pass our own, we would have to fall in line with whatever the USDA had already set out. So the state went ahead and took action there, and we adopted our own act, and then the Georgia Department of Agriculture also submitted our plan, our state plan. And so we are currently registered with USDA for that, and it primarily was looking at growing and processing. What we found is that while the department was looking at growing and processing, there was this new industry that popped up. And so last year, after kind of watching what was happening in the hemp space, we asked that we take that authority a little bit further. So we do growers, processors, manufacturers, wholesalers, retailers, labs. And that was kind of what was expanded in 494. Kind of the crux, kind of the way that we really control what comes into the state is through the testing process. So any product that is sold here has to be tested in a lab that the Georgia Department of Agriculture recognizes. They have to have certain certifications, qualifications, and then, you know, we'll do spot checks and we'll get to know them and all these things. So if a product is not tested at a state verified lab, that's a problem. Within the testing that they're doing, they have to have a little QR code on whatever the product is, and it takes you to the testing results of that product. In our rules, some in code, but then in our rules we go a little bit further and we outline exactly what we're going to look for. So there's a pretty long list of cannabinoids. We're also looking for heavy metals, pesticides, molds, things that you would often look for, or that we do look for in foods. So these products weren't getting any of those tests, and everything else on the market was. So those are some of the things that we built in also there. Anyone operating within this kind of ecosystem has to be registered with the department and have a license issued by us.
Okay.
I'm going to pause there because I feel like I've talked a lot.
No, that was perfect. Follow up, Mr. Chairman?
Certainly.
So when you're talking about what you're doing as far as testing, so essentially, in layman's terms, they're growing the hemp, and then they dry it down to a powder per se, and then when you test it, it can't be 0.3%. That is it a powder? Gel or something,
I wouldn't
liquid.
describe it that
Yeah.
way. There are a couple of different ways, and we test in different places, right? So you need to kind of keep in mind that you've got market participants that are jumping in and out in different places. Mm-hmm. We unfortunately didn't see many of our growers kind of survive after a couple of years. We've had a big increase in applications in growers, which we are grateful for. So when you see, like if you were to take a flower off of a plant that's in a field, so you take that, and well, actually, there are people that are certified that will go snip a bud from a field, and it can't just be anybody. And it goes to a lab that we have with a contract with, and it is dried out, That's where the dry weight basis comes from. Then it's homogenized and it's crushed up, it's homogenized, it's put through either a gas or a liquid chromatographer with a mass spectrometer, and then you get a profile of what the components are. And that's how you would test flour. Now, if you're looking at a product, so that 0.3% is going to apply in a couple of different places, I guess is what I'm saying. Sorry.
So, thank you. So, one more, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. So, I'm going somewhere with this, I promise. So, we have the 0.3%, and then we go to the percentages that we're going to get to the drinks and gummies and things like that. I guess what I'm trying to figure out, how do you derive, so you have the 0.3% on the hemp, how do they get to those points that are a percentage in like Delta 8, Delta 9, Delta 10, and then do they change the way they make it to Chairman Jasper's point, as far as can they tweak it to simulate something different, and are they a test for those things? I apologize for so many questions. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm just trying to get to that from the hemp part, dried at 0.3 to what we're trying to regulate in my mind to try to understand that.
I think I hear a couple of questions in there, and but I think the one that's most important is I think that you're curious about cannabinoid derivatives versus, and those that are synthetically derived potentially. So if you've got CBD, you can make all kinds of stuff.
Okay.
I mean, it's what you see oftentimes. Delta 9 is going to be the most abundant. We know the most about it. You don't really have to process it for it to have an intoxicating effect, and so humans have really enjoyed using it over the past, millennia. But we don't know nearly as much about, let's say, THCP, which doesn't occur on its own, right, and has been modified. And then you have, let's say, HHC, which also doesn't occur on its own. But I believe with that one, I believe that you take CBD and you run it across a metal column, and you, at that point, you see a conversion. One of the things that's not great about those products that you can see sometimes is that in the profile that you get back, they have spikes oftentimes in heavy metals. And then also there are spikes sometimes for analytes, and they're unidentified.
So the 0.3 is we're talking about CBD, and then when we start getting into the THC, it's kind of a different avenue. So you have a raw product of CBD that comes from hemp, and then you take that and you can use it for creams and things like that from the CBD, and then go to the THC. To get the THC, you have to do all these different things to it. Is that what I'm hearing?
You don't have to.
Okay.
You don't have to. And the 0.3 only applies to Delta 9. And that comes from the definition that's established in the 2018 Farm Bill.
Okay.
And so that's kind of a definition and a measurement that's kind of pushed down that we can't just, strike it because we don't like it.
Right. And then, so the 5 or 10 or for medical marijuana, we went to the 50. That was for oil, obviously, but that would have been different, though. I guess that was medical marijuana. So we're talking about or CBD and medical marijuana. So that's from two different plants, correct?
Well, a couple of things there.
I'm slow,
so that's okay.
Please bear with me.
So with the marijuana, they're discussing percentages, and with a lot of the numbers that you hear here talking about hemp, it's milligrams total. And so they do come from the same plant. You actually can have a physical plant in the ground that can go from being hemp to cannabis back to, or I call it marijuana because cannabis is the umbrella term for the plant itself. But yeah, you can, just like you can have a dwarf azalea and a regular size azalea, right? I think that's a good comparison. That's what you can do with the cannabis plant.
Okay. So you manipulate it to be whatever thing you need it to be, just like you do corn or
Or
whatever.
you can
I mean,
harvest it early. Like if
Right.
you don't want it to, if you don't want it to get hot, you can just stop it from growing.
you make rope out of it.
I do not. Some people do.
No, I'm not you. But yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you
Thank
for your.
you.
Of course.
All right, Mr. Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Russell. It's obvious the Department of Agriculture being our number one, you're safeguarding the number one industry in Georgia, and that's our food quality and products. Y'all do a great job at that, and it seems like you've got your handle around how you're testing for quality and making sure these products fall within your regulatory guidelines. My question is, so of our 50 states, this is a state control product, correct? I mean,
It is
we're-
controlled
in
by the
Georgia.
state in part. Mhm.
All right. So our producers that are producing this legal product right now, can they sell across state lines? Or
Well, the
converse to
question-
that, can
I think
other,
the-
can other
sell-
producers sell into
what?
Georgia?
I think what you get around to is sell what, right?
Well,
'Cause-
let's say the THC infused drinks. the
Okay, so
Delta
that's
9
different than
drinks.
like distillate, which would be really hot.
Okay.
So there's nothing preventing anyone from manufacturing in this state and selling out of state.
Okay. I'm just curious,
Sure.
again, innocent question.
Based
just
on their state laws.
Right. So, and do we see any inbound product coming into the state of Georgia?
Significant. Now,
and-
we can't monitor all of that. We don't have a structure where we can completely capture all of the numbers. It is illegal to make a sale in Georgia of any product that doesn't meet our specifications.
Including the QR codes? Okay.
People get a little hung up on where the sale takes place. If you're selling to a Georgian, the sale takes place here. So anyone that's selling into our state needs to be registered with us as a retailer at a minimum.
Okay. And just final, because obviously this is going to have a degree of the law enforcement powers that the Department of Agriculture has is going to have to be ready to enforce whatever laws are on the books now and may be forthcoming. Are you adequately staffed and prepared to fulfill the law enforcement function of regulating this?
Well, we would love some more money.
Okay.
That would be very helpful.
That's not this committee's role.
We do have a number of post-certified officers who are focused on this and doing a great job. One of the things that they are doing is they're reaching out to the law enforcement community. They've actually been teaching classes. I understand that there is a annual like recertification requirement, and I understand that they're trying to get some hemp training into that. So they're calling them force multipliers, where we reach out to other groups that will be visiting a lot of the same locations and have a lot of the same interest that we do.
Okay, well, do that, and you can answer my questions, but thank you.
Let's see. Yes, Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Russell. You mentioned something about the need to do a study, and I'm all for empirical studies and data. Speaking of which, are you familiar with the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration in Georgia?
I'm not very familiar with them.
Okay. And I appreciate that. In 2021, and I only selected 2021 because the senator mentioned 2018. And so I went on here, and my question is in terms around alcohol. And again, for the audience, I'm not trying to come after the alcohol. Continue to drink your alcohol beverages, but I just want to make a common sense approach here. But this study, ma'am, it says that the ages of 12 to 20, the number one substance is alcohol. From the ages of 12 to 20. And this is online for those who are interested. And on here, it says that they divided it into two different groups. Those who had normal alcohol use, and again, this is the ages of 12 to 20. In Georgia, 14.4%. Then they had ages 12 to 20 who would binge alcohol use. 8%. They're number one. Number two is meth in Georgia in terms of substance abuse. And so if you all are doing this study, I would love for you all to bring to this body a comparative analysis of all those things that are in our industry that can negatively influence those in the ages of 12 to 20. And then we should bring some common sense legislation to talk about guardrails. But if we're just aiming at one particular product that's been around since 2018 in Georgia, and we have those who have empirical evidence of where our focus and concentration should be. And so when you all do your study, it would be great to say, here's a comparative analysis, right? Because right now we're talking about THC, and I keep hearing this word, to get high. All these things are typically in the urban community, and I just think that's wrong. They said on this study, the reason why alcohol is number one, because it has the easiest access for children, because it's in everybody's house. So THC is not in everybody's house in Georgia, unlike alcohol is. Children at the age of 12. So we can talk about how to put guardrails and how to make sure it's behind the counter and labeling. All that makes sense to me. But when we have a product in Georgia where a 12-year-old can get to it and they're 8% of them are binge drinking, then let's really talk about the common sense approach. Because this bill right here is not going to do it when we have data already like this. So my question, Mr. Chairman, it's great that we continue to have these conversations, right? But we're not pumping the brake on alcohol sales in Georgia. And again, I'm not coming after alcohol. But we're talking about pumping the brake in this small little industry in Georgia. Small little industry. Let's pump the brake there. But this big old industries, meth, alcohol, and everything else that's listed in this 24-page document, we're not talking about pumping the brakes there. So that's my question. When you do your study, will you also include all those other things that can have an individual in Georgia under the influence? And I'm using the word under the influence because I hate when people say to get high, because they're trying to say a message, and it doesn't resonate very well with me. A father with 7 children, 4 daughters and 3 sons, and the youngest is 19 and the oldest is 30. And so I understand. I am their parental control, even for my 30-year-old, when it comes to use. And so when you do your study, that's my question. When you do your study, are we going to do a full comprehensive study, or we're just going to aim at this area right here?
So the studies that I was mentioning earlier are, there's a House and a Senate resolution for committees in both of those chambers to study, and I will be more than happy to convey that request to the chairman of those committees, but I don't actually have a role there. Okay. So I'll try, but
That's fair.
Thank you, Representative. Let's see, Ms. Bennett.
I don't think so. I can hear you, but
You can hear me. Oh, perfect, perfect. Thank you for all of your explanation. I still need a 101 in this. But let's talk about, I believe it begins on line 50, we talk about the beverage, go back to the beverage. And we talked about that earlier, what percentage could be in the beverage and how many fluid ounces, blah, blah, blah. Is it the intent of the department to allow those sales in liquor stores?
my understanding is that there there is a preventative rule that's keeping the sales out of liquor stores. It is not anything that the Department of Agriculture established, and we would like to see everyone be able to participate equally.
More follow-up, Mr. Chairman? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if it's not sold in liquor stores, where is it? Would it be sold in grocery stores? Where is it? Where is this consumable beverage going to be sold?
Well, I think Winn-Dixie is about to carry them, but maybe not at this time. So there are hemp stores that are, they're going to be your over 21 only stores because the only thing that they sell in there are hemp. You can see this in other convenience stores, right? So at this time, we're licensing retailers, but the focus was really on beginning to understand where the products were being sold in the state, rather than cutting people out. So whenever you bring regulation after an industry has already been established for 5 or 6 or 7 years, you have to kind of work. You got to work with people kind of where they are. And so in theory, you could purchase a drink any place that has a retailer license.
That would include a liquor store.
We would not prevent that, but I believe that there is language in the substitute that would allow for it.
Thank you. Just wanted clarity.
All right. Is that it, Ms. Bennett?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Let me give the committee just a short caveat to that. The reason it's sold everywhere, but it can be sold anywhere that's licensed by the Department of Agriculture that has a retail license. The reason it's not sold in a liquor store is because the rules and regulations of revenue is very specific about what can be sold in a liquor store. You can sell soft drinks, you can sell anything that mixes with liquor. But it is not permitted. This is one thing is not permitted because we've got to change the regulations on that. All right. Mr. McCollum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make sure. So you're here for the Department of Agriculture. Y'all just do what the legislator says to do, correct? You don't have anything to do with the legislation that we're looking at now. I mean, obviously, you just regulate what we already have in place, correct?
Well, we definitely follow the law. So that part is true, and we do try to participate as an active resource to legislators when you guys begin to make decisions about how you like to see things crafted. And then in addition, just like any other agency, we may have power delegated to us, and in this instance we do, to go ahead and draft our own rules and regulations to see things carried out in a little bit more detail, because you can't think of everything when you write the law.
So one more question, if I may. So if we say, for instance, we do the drink and it's 12 ounces and we do 5 milligrams, and you had referred to it earlier, can someone actually make that 5 milligrams hotter? I mean, I think, is that not possible? I mean, it's going to be 5 milligrams of the same stuff. You can't manipulate it one way or another.
Well, I think it all depends on how you define it. So you could have a drink that's 5 milligrams of Delta 9 and 10 milligrams of HHC. That's going to be stronger than something that's just 5 milligrams of Delta 9.
Okay, that was my question. Is no matter what we do, you can change. Potentially, unless you fix the loopholes, you could potentially make it different.
I think that we're dealing with an industry of entrepreneurs who are very creative thinkers, and we've seen people have new novel responses to some of the regulations that have been established.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I don't see any more questions, but I want to thank Ms. Russell. She's had about 2 weeks of working with me in the office, and I'll be quite honest, it's been more than enlightening, and I can certainly understand the issues from the committee. And I want to give you for instance that we started out trying to figure out how to put a excise tax on this. And we started out by trying to define. Well, we couldn't. I finally realized after a period of time, we can't define the number of hemp-based products that go into these drinks because they're infinite. And for the committee members that have been around long enough to know that we do a couple of drug bills every year about illegal drugs and about this and that, because by the time the governor has signed one bill, it's kind of obsolete because of the entrepreneurs that Ms. Russell talked about. Because in these products, that all you got to do is somebody that's smart enough to do it, they can go in and they can change the molecules in something, and they've got another product out there. So it's kind of infinite. So in the substitute that we were working on, we finally came up with a definition of just hemp-based drinks to be all encompassing to that. And then, of course, revenue came in, and we've had some discussions of revenue. And at this point, and I'll just sort of hold my thoughts on that to fill y'all in probably at the next meeting tomorrow. But I want to thank Catherine for your time, your expertise, and I want to thank you from the chair for the time that you've spent helping to educate me about all of this issue. I'm kind of simple-minded, and I'm still one that believes whatever God lets grow natural can't be as bad as something made in a laboratory. So, that being said, I want to try to get, as you can see, we're losing members. This is a work day, and we have a lot of people that signed up to talk. And I'm trying, maybe for the benefit of the committee, those that have not just saying they're for or against, but something that will be pertinent to the conversation. And I'm trying to think who would give some kind of evidentiary before we move to that section. I see the gentleman right here, you raised your hand.
Yes,
if
sir.
you have something that's evidentiary other than the fact that you like it or dislike it or pro or con.
I definitely have some things to think about that aren't just like it or don't like it. Absolutely, yes, sir.
Would you like to speak?
Yes, absolutely.
And who are you?
My name is Jeff Yuki. I'm glad you didn't read the
Have you-
thing. My name is impossible to.
Have you signed up?
I am. I'm on the back. I'm on the back.
And you would be Jeff?
You could. I'm telling you, man. Just make it Jeff. You're
Yes, sir.
You're gonna
give it.
be real sad trying to pronounce that one.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
Now that you said that, I'm just going to make sure that I do a couple of things, but to say a couple of things. I feel like as I've sat in here, I was also in 33 for the meeting for that, and as I've sat in here, it seems like there is a large need for a study committee just to gain some understanding on what these products are, how they work, whatever it is. I feel like it would be a great thing. Myself personally, I don't drink. And so I've heard a lot of people say things like a 10 milligram drink is equal to however many beers. And I think that maybe we all just kind of forgot about tolerances. Like I make jokes with my buddies on the golf course about like, I remember my first beer when they hit a bat, like that first beer was way strong compared to some others, you know? And so if anyone has like, oh, I'm going to go to Vegas and try out something, if it's not something we got used to, not only is it going to be stronger than we have used to feeling, but it's also going to be a feeling we're not used to feeling as well. Whereas something else is just a little more comfortable, a little more familiar. And so I don't know if that, like if I had one or two beers, I'd go to space. I haven't drank it in some years. So it's a very difficult description for me to get behind, you know? Beyond that, the law for the 10 milligrams per drink just happened. It just happened. I mean, like, it went into effect a few months ago. I feel like the idea behind that was to put some stops in place and see if that works and see what kind of data that we get from it, and maybe we can improve upon that. And I just don't feel like we've had any time to get any data from the 494 that just passed. And I mean, I don't know what the deal is for everyone in here, but myself, we have 5 locations, so switching around all of the labels and products to make sure it was compliant was a hefty expense, not to mention losing a third of our business due to the flower ban being, so all that happened kind of simultaneously, and this just is another random attack that works against the thing that we were just doing. I just changed all of our labeling to have it be this, and now it would switch again. It would be very difficult. Beyond that, I put this away. There's one thing that I kept hearing today a lot from people. It seems like we have removed agency from people to make decisions. Like, because this product exists, now people have to drink and drive. Or, you know, and like we give people the trust to not gummy and drive or drink and drive or whatever based on the laws that exist, based on their care of personal property and not wanting to cause harm to others. Going to jail, these are all the stopgaps that existed. And frankly, it's a drink, man. Like, if I feel like I'm having too much of whatever, I'm having too many beers, I can stop drinking it. And that's the cool thing about having a drink, is that we feel it as it's happening, right? It's not like a gummy where you take it and then just all of a sudden in a few hours you feel whatever you feel. A drink is a slow progression. I could just stop drinking it if it was too much or if I felt a feeling that I didn't enjoy. I'm not trapped into I don't know. Either way, I believe that we are responsible for our own consumption, and I think that those rules have existed in the alcohol industry for a really long time. And I think that they should absolutely be applied here. If some idiot is going to drink 30 milligrams and drive home, that's his own stupid fault. We all know that's against the rules. I've been in the business since 2018. I had 7 locations before COVID. I have 5 now. I've moved thousands of customers. I heard someone talking about selling to children. I've had the ATF come and send me letters saying I'm doing a good job for carding people. So like, that's not the thing either, but we do expect adults to be adults. And I do think that leaving the agency in people to make a good decision or a bad decision is kind of one of the things that America's been really good at over the last few hundred years. So I think we should keep doing it. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you for your time. What's your business you have?
We have a grouping of stores. Our company is named Nature Oil Georgia. We have 5 in Georgia, from South Georgia all the way up to like Loganville and then Macon. So
Well, if I might make an observation, you didn't know if you were for it or against it, but I think you're for it.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I was so excited to say the things. Yes, I am for some of the things and not for some of the.
Hold on, you have a question, Mr. Washburn.
Thank you. I was just curious. I represent part of Macon. Where is your store in Macon?
I am right next to the Hobby Lobby on Riverside Drive.
Okay.
I'm literally next door to Jersey Mike's across from the mall.
I understand. I know where you are.
Yeah, we've been there since 2020.
Drop in and see you.
Please, we would love to have you. Any local law enforcement. We did that study committee. I asked if I could be a part of or how can I be a part of the study committee for 33. I would love to be a part of.
Thank
whatever
you.
got.
Very good. And Chairman Washburn may stop in to try a sample. All right.
That'd be great.
All right. I want to call right now. Is revenue still in here? Lorraine, would you come up for just a brief? Says we have just about lost our committee, and but from the revenue standpoint, if you'd like to say a word or two, especially from the meeting we had earlier today about the complexities of why package stores can't sell and what it's going to take to put it
Sure.
together.
So I think there are people in the room possibly from the retail alcohol perspectives that can speak to some of the history with specifically package stores. That is an area that historically we've had what we call mercantile rules to kind of, they place limits or guardrails on what specifically can be sold in a liquor store. We have furthered those through statutory direction that tells us to set trade practices. You'll see that we have regulations that say what can or cannot be sold in a liquor store. And when we speak about beverages, our limitations run along the lines of beverages in liquor stores that are not alcoholic beverages are there with an eye toward things used to dilute alcohol. So from our perspective, with the passage of the bill last year, which specifically called out no alcoholic beverage that contains the consumable hemp piece is legal in Georgia. We are looking for the policy direction of the legislature on any amendment or guardrails that may be needed, right? So with our liquor stores, we have the question, which this substitute answers, as to whether or not it's okay for those products to be in the liquor store, since products in the liquor store are meant to be used to dilute spirits.
Very good. Well, for the members that are still here, I guess y'all understood that. So, and I want to thank you and our friends from over at Revenue for meeting with me of several times about the complexities.
Thank you so much.
The original substitute that I was working on, we finally realized that we had to pull the plug on the excise tax for this year because it crosses several code sections.
Yes.
To make it permissible. So that gives y'all the authority to allow the package stores to do that.
The current substitute will allow,
On
it gives
excise
us that authority. It doesn't quite with the excise tax components.
Right.
We're looking for some space to stand up that system, yes.
Yeah. Whereas it's a lot easier to put the statutory language that y'all need to make it permissible.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to excise tax. Any questions from the committee? All right. Thank you, Lorraine.
Thank
My
you.
thanks to the Revenue Department. Y'all catch all the flack from all the General Assembly every year. There's only a couple of departments. Seems like everything winds up as being another burden on y'all to have to regulate or to control. So thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
All right. I saw some hands. If y'all could tell me, today I want to stick to some substantive, not just whether you're for or against. I see a man is waving his hand like he hadn't had a CBD.
I'm a manufacturer. Can I speak?
And you're with who?
I'm a manufacturer of TH Chill. It's a cannabinoid manufacturer drink in Georgia.
Well, sure. Come on up. I think we've had ag and we've had revenue department, so let's have a few of y'all folks. All right. And what is your name? Did you sign up?
I did. I'm on the back.
And your name?
My name is Alan Porter. I'm with a drink manufacturing company. I own it called TH Chill, like THC, HILL.
Welcome.
Thank you, guys. We're based out of the Beltline in Atlanta. We've been in business for about 14 months now. Started the business because I stopped drinking for a custody case. I owned a bunch of breweries in Atlanta, and I stopped making beer. So my brewery started to go under, and I never smoked my whole life, and I figured out about this new cannabinoid thing out west. It was completely legal, so I adhered to the laws of the U.S. and Georgia and started manufacturing a year ago just to adhere to the laws that I knew. I went to conventions out west. I saw what other people were doing. There weren't that many manufacturers at all in Georgia. So here's the playbook. I tried to abide by it. I launched my business. It has been very difficult trying to find distributors around Georgia. When I've met with them, everybody's gun shy of doing business in Georgia right now. When I say everybody, I'm going to say the 6 to 10 Georgia distributors that I've met with in person multiple times would not take me on until this legislation happened or that legislation happened. It's always waiting to see what's going to happen the next in Georgia. We just don't know. It's gone. Delta 9 has been targeted. That's because that was targeted originally by the feds for the 2018 Farm Bill. It's very important because other states look at that. Georgia's looking at that. There are other cannabinoids. And it was referenced multiple times that some entrepreneur can go take other cannabinoids. If you make Delta 9 illegal to come up with something different. You know, that's not exactly the same. That's like saying there's no more apples left, have an orange. They're totally different. The way they work are different. They should all be looked at individually. If anything from this meeting that was productive that I heard was great from both sides, please do some more research on how everything's different so it can be regulated correctly. I am not against regulation. Like the previous speaker said, two in front of me, this industry's been around for a long time. We regulate alcohol, saying, okay, well, you can't buy pure alcohol. It has to be, I think, Everclear is the next one. There are some regulations along there. But saying, Delta 8 is the same as Delta 9, it's totally different. I'm a chemist from Duke, and hearing people say spreading misinformation without without any kind of truth behind it becomes fact. And I'd love to answer some questions in the future or now that anybody has about different types of cannabinoids. But if it does get outlawed in Georgia, unfortunately, I have two options. I would shut down my manufacturing here and move to Florida. Those are the two options, really. I have two options. I'd like to keep working here in Georgia. I have a lot of employees. It's a big business. I supply CBD stores. I sell online. And we supply a lot of Georgians' jobs. So if you guys have any questions from somebody who's a manufacturer, I'd love just to give you truth if there is any. I'd love to put my name in somehow for future questions you guys have outside of this meeting. So just to help, that's what I'm here for.
Thank you, Mr. Porter. Any questions? Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And you may make yourself available later on, because I'm sure there'll be more questions the next meeting. All right, who's waving their hands back there? I see that gentleman with the still got a semi-gray beard.
Okay, thank you.
And if I may ask the folks, if you could, if there's a redundancy of your comments, try to be brief, because brevity picks up a lot of points with this chair.
I will, Chairman. Thank you so much. And thank you, representatives. Broad concerns, specific concerns. Broad is just about THC in general. Responding to Representative Jackson about why are we concerned about marijuana at all, and so to speak. Let's backtrack to some other substances, tobacco, alcohol, and opioids, for example. The public health impacts that the last major study that was done, alcohol kills 480,000 people per year. Tobacco. Alcohol, 178,000 people per year. Opioids, 100,000 people per year. So these are big numbers. We want to make sure that marijuana doesn't get there. Now, are there any concerns about marijuana? Back in the day, and I used to smoke marijuana 30 years ago, it was about 3% THC. Our medical marijuana today is 5%. Leafy green stuff, easy, 20%. The derivatives, 60 or even higher. So this is not like 50% doesn't mean half strength. It means 10 times more powerful than 5%. So THC potency has really gone up. Because of that, 20, 30 years ago, the CDC and other health organizations used to say that 1 in 10 people who use marijuana will develop a cannabis use disorder. What's a cannabis use disorder? It's something that means I'm experiencing some negative aspects from cannabis in my life, and I really can't stop. That's a short answer of what cannabis use disorder is. It used to be 1 in 10. Now the CDC publishes on their cannabis website 3 in 10 people who use cannabis develop a cannabis use disorder. Why is that a problem? Well, there's a study that came out of Denmark. 7 million people over a 20-year period showed that people with a cannabis use disorder were 3 to 4 times more likely to develop schizophrenia. Now, granted, this is big science stuff, but when Senator Costard said pump the brakes, it's like, well, these are big numbers and big populations with serious potential causes that we want to be concerned about. Teenagers, even though it's not legal to use marijuana as a teenager, according to SAMHSA, Substance Abuse, Mental Health and Services Administration, that Representative Jackson quoted earlier, according to them, more teens in Georgia go to treatment for marijuana than all other drugs combined. And I'll be happy to share that data. It sounds unreal, but it's from SAMHSA. They published that in repeated annual studies. Is that real? Is that really happening in Georgia? Anecdotally, we work a lot with school systems and students in high school and middle school. You tell them one of some of the biggest problems, they'll say vaping. Vaping is one of the biggest problems in the schools, whether it's nicotine, whether it's marijuana. Using vapes and THC and nicotine has become so ubiquitous, we're putting a future generation at great risk if we greatly expand access to THC. Those are the public health concerns we're coming from. If I bring it back down to this bill for a second and we just talk about guardrails, yes, we support guardrails. So for example, this bill, SB254, proposes 10 milligram serving size limits. And I want to say that Florida is 10, South Carolina is 0.5, Tennessee is 25, Louisiana is 5, Virginia is 5, Colorado's 10, California is 10, Oregon's 5, Washington's 10. So we're in the ballpark at 10 milligrams. Package size limits, this bill proposes 150 milligrams per package. Florida is 200. South Carolina is 25. Louisiana is 40. Virginia's 50. Colorado's 100. California's 100. Oregon's 50. Washington's 100. So 150, we're already higher than most states where marijuana is legal. That's all I have to share. If you have any questions.
I'm sorry, what's your name?
Sorry about that. I'm Michael Mumper with
Are
Georgians
you-
for
are you
Responsible
on-
Marijuana
did
Policy.
you sign up?
I
Mike?
did, sir, yes. On the first page, about the fifth name down.
Thank you, Michael. I don't see any questions. I think you testified at the medical cannabis.
I did, sir.
Very good. All right. Thank you so much. Hold on. Trying to see if we have anyone of any scientific substance. We want to try to get to them today. Do we have anyone that? No? I see your hand. Come on up. Whoever's smoking a joint that cut the lights on, please cut them back on.
Hi, my name is Diana Padron. I'm the owner of Hemp Haven ATL. You guys had asked for
I'm sorry again. What's your name?
Diana Padron
All right. Thank you.
with Hemp Haven ATL. I am totally against what's going on right now. You had asked if I had any scientific information about the bill that we're discussing, and I actually ChatGPT'd everything while you guys were talking. And it says that 10 milligrams of THC versus alcohol. Let's see here. The effect types. THC, 10 milligrams of THC, stronger relaxation, euphoria, possible couch lock, mild impairment. 2 alcoholic beverages, relaxation, lowered inhibitions, and mild intoxication. Cognitive impact. 10 milligrams of THC can cause short-term memory issues and altered perception. 2 alcoholic beverages, impaired judgment, slower reaction time. What are the health effects? 10 milligrams of THC, no hangover, possible anxiety if too much, may support relaxation and stress relief. 2 alcoholic beverages can cause dehydration, liver strain, and hangover effects. This is what ChatGPT says. ChatGPT, which one is better? For health, a hemp drink is generally better. No liver damage, dehydration, or addiction risk. For socializing, alcohol has a familiar social effect, but THC can be a good alternative depending on tolerance. For impairment, 10 milligrams of THC can be quite strong, especially for beginners. Okay? What do doctors have mixed opinions? This is all ChatGPT. Supportive views. Doctors have said that for pain and anxiety management, doctors believe that THC drinks can be a good alternative to alcohol or pharmaceuticals for relaxation and stress relief. Doctors also have a supportive view saying that it is safer than alcohol. Unlike alcohol, THC doesn't damage the liver or cause dehydration, which some medical professionals see as positive. THC is also a better sleep aid. So therefore, all of this is on ChatGPT, and it's all saying that THC is a more positive gives more positive effects than alcohol. So when it comes, I have 4 children, had been in my business for 7 years. I have people, a lot of older people are coming to my store asking for pain relief. They're tired of taking the medications because the medications are killing their liver and damaging their kidneys. And so when they come, they're looking for a more natural alternative to taking these pharmaceuticals. I also get a lot of older men and women that come to the store because they've been drinking for 20 years and they've started to develop a problem. And so now they need something to help them relax, but they don't want to go towards alcohol. So they're coming to the store looking for the alternative, which is a hemp drink. No one can come into the store unless they're 21 and over. Once they come into the store, we card them. So inside the store, we do have a regulated area. And before you buy any of the drinks, we card you as well. So I definitely support hemp drinks in our industry. I feel like if you have to be 21 and over to buy alcohol, you should be 21 and over to get your hemp drinks. We're all adults. We all know what we like and what we need. Most important thing is I do agree with making sure that we have the warning labels, making sure that we have more education in our school systems to teach our children about the dangers of consuming cannabinoid products before they have become adults. I've never had a problem in my household. My children know that hemp products are bad for them. I always tell them, if you try these products, you will go to the hospital. I've never had a problem with that. Thank you very much. And any questions?
I do have a question. Mr. Mitchell. Actually, Mr. Chair.
All right, good. Mr. Chair, we're getting such good information here. I was wondering at the next hearing when we decide on the fate of this proposition, do you plan on having the testimony given again, or this is it?
Well, obviously, when I say brevity, that doesn't mean a whole lot to the free world out there. But I will tell you what the posture of this chair is. We have worked up a substitute, and we have scrapped it. We worked up another substitute, and we've scrapped it because of the issues about excise tax. We'll be working on it during the summer. This chair is not very much about banning a substance, especially something that I consider that God lets grow natural, quite frankly. We have businesses in Georgia because of the hypocrisy of the U.S. Congress. People asked a while ago, I think there was a question asked a while ago about transporting, the manufacturers transporting across state lines. Of course, it's illegal. Federal law says it is, but they don't even, I think the federal government has probably issued an executive order not to enforce any of their prohibitions on marijuana-based, or in this case, CD-based substances. So, you know, I have some ideas about dealing with a specific problem, but we'll look at that tomorrow to see what the will of the committee is at that point. All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, we've got a few minutes because I've got rules committee to go to. The gentleman with the goatee, we've heard from you on every time any of this subject comes up. So you just come on up here and let's. And your name is? To the folks that seem to be leaving, I think we've got a committee scheduled for tomorrow.
What time?
Yeah, what time?
For those of y'all that are leaving that we may not get to testify today, we'll be meeting again tomorrow. And I'm looking to see what time that is.
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock?
I don't know.
Or you can call the office, but you know, we're getting close to running out of time, but we will continue this tomorrow. Yes, sir, and your name is?
I'm Dr. Greg Raduca. I'm with Georgians for Responsible Marijuana Policy. I'm the vice president of the board, so I'm a volunteer. I've been in the substance abuse treatment and prevention field for the last 50 years. And so in that time, this seems to be one of the most important topics to be dealt with. I think that when Director Powell was testifying, she made some incredibly important points. One, I think, too, is the Joint Study Committee, or I'm sorry, the House Study Committee is a great idea because this issue is complex. And the Agriculture Department made a great start with Senate Bill 494, but there is a lot more territory to cover, as you've remarked already today. One of those things is, as you mentioned, there are really an innumerable number of products. One of those products are vape products that we haven't really talked about, and I believe the Agriculture Committee is looking at possibly expanding their rules on minimum weights and volumes to include vapes. A member of our advisory council at GRMP, as we call it for short, recommended some vape maximums and minimums, which I hope might appear in the rules in future editions. He's saying that to be safe, and for the record, I would rather not have vapes at all, but I know that's the reality, that no more than 5 milligrams of THC per 1.5 milliliters of e-liquid, as it's called. That's the liquid that you vape. I haven't vaped, but 5 milligrams of THC per 1.5 milliliters of e-liquid per vape cartridge. And for those of you who, like me, may not know that a cartridge, or a cart, as it's often referred to, is a small pre-filled tank containing liquid. So I think that's a very important type of product that's not yet defined in the rules or in Senate Bill 254, which we do support. So regarding THC, there are actually over 80,000 peer-reviewed articles that have appeared in prior years. And as a treatment professional, I saw the effects of THC up front, very unfortunately, in teenagers. But some of the main effects are addiction, chemical dependency, substance dependence. Cannabis use disorder, unfortunately, is a very real thing. It's in the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of the American Psychiatric Association, along with opioid use disorder and some of those others. Suicide. When people have long-term use of THC, it can help in the short term with anxiety and depression, physical pain, etc. But in the long run, it can cause many people to become more anxious, more depressed, and that's in a lot of the peer-reviewed research articles that we can be happy to provide to the committee. Traffic deaths, and Representative Jackson is quite right about the statistics, and this drives me nuts. In Georgia, it's very complicated to measure and then report somebody for a THC-related DUI, or DUID as it's called. And it would take another bill to resolve so much of what's involved in trying to measure and report somebody for a THC impairment. But in other states, they do have a per se law. It's not perfect, and no per se law is, but I think it's better than what we've got right now. In those states that do have per se laws, like Washington and Colorado, they're reporting on the average one traffic death due to THC impairment once every 3 to 4 days on their highways. And our population is a lot bigger than Colorado, but we don't know. We don't know how many people are dying due to THC impairment on Georgia's highways. And that's a shame. And our little agency just doesn't have enough bandwidth yet to get a bill in motion for that. But it's so needed. If anybody who's listening to me wants to work on that, please. Violence. It can lead to violence. Again, we've got the peer-reviewed literature to show that. And this is long-term use because PTSD, again, long-term, it can increase anxiety, it can increase depression, and it increase suicidal ideation, the desire to kill oneself. IQ, long-term studies have shown that when THC is used from adolescence to middle age, it can reduce IQ as much as 6 to 8 points. And 8 points is about, if the average IQ is 100, then we're starting to really get into a significant IQ decrease. So those are the, just one other thing is that, this so often can start in, chasing the pain, relief for pain, something like that, but it can turn into an addiction, and that's the problem with THC, is that you need more and more of it over time to feel just as good, and then after a while you need more of it just in order not to feel bad. So that's the problem.
Very good. Any questions? All right, I see we're fixing to lose the last of the committee. All right. Thank you. Let's have a chat. All right. No questions. Ladies and gentlemen, we have run out of time. Rules Committee meets in 15 minutes. So we will reconvene tomorrow. I think it's at 2 o'clock. And if any of y'all wish to be here, I'd love to have you. All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is the House Regulated Industries Committee. If you would, go ahead and silence your telephones. If you don't mind, or you'll be paying a hefty fine of buying us dinner. All right. I want to preface a few comments today. We started yesterday with a hearing on Senator Calsert's bill 254. To the members, y'all remember what was discussed yesterday and what was in the bill that was put before us. And we heard testimony yesterday, and we had to move on out pretty quick. But we suspect that we know how a lot of the folks that had signed up yesterday. Now, I'm not one that chairs a meeting that I don't believe in people having a right to be heard, but I think we heard a pretty good feel yesterday. I want to preface a couple of more comments. This issue before us is something that we have last year when the legislature passed the hemp bill and sent it to the Ag Department. They have put the guardrails around what is and what's not eligible, what's in the testing and such as that. It appears to be a new type of a drink or other type of things that could be used for the personal enjoyment of folks. I have said for years that, those of us who've dealt with alcohol issues, we know that the alcohol industry has lost a lot of curry over the years because younger people want something else. They don't want the headaches, they don't want the hangovers, and quite frankly, it appears to me that a lot of folks are probably drinking these because from the folks that I have talked to that's told me about them, it's sort of a tranquil effect. I mean, that's the best I can explain it. I haven't heard a lot about the buzzing, but, I'm not a hypocrite. At the very least, people do drink alcohol because they like the buzz, except for me. I purely like the taste of Irish whiskey, but that comes from my genetic background. So, that being said, I am going to give everybody here a chance to be heard in one fashion. And if I would, everybody here that's here to speak in favor of this bill, because we certainly heard some yesterday that put the caution out there. Anybody here that's here to speak in favor, if you would raise your hand. All right. Do we have, how many folks are manufacturers as opposed to retailers? All right. Very good. Now, we can move on very quickly with this. I have a proposition before the committee. If you'll look at the substitute to House Bill 254, and this is LC 28069S, because we're going to be studying this in depth this summer. I mean, we'll be studying it in depth. the issues about this hemp-based products and all for full understanding. One of the things that came out yesterday, and as I questioned the author of the bill, he agreed that if there's any place that should have the right to sell these products, it should be package stores, because they check IDs and such as that. So it didn't seem to be fair. So before you, what you see is a substitute to the bill, and it does one thing only. It gives the Department of Revenue the authority to promulgate the rules and regs to allow package stores, if they are licensed by the Department of Agriculture for these products, for them to sell these products. And if there's any discussion, I'll open the floor up. Nobody's got a question? What a great committee. Number 24.
Can I still be on the committee?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm still trying to get my head around all this. Does this in any way allow us to collect excise taxes on these?
No, sir. Yesterday, I had discussed this for the last 2 or 3 weeks. We've been working with the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Revenue about putting some guardrails and putting excise tax. And Revenue met with me yesterday, and out of an abundance of precaution, they said that it would take more than just a simple section. This was, a matter of fact, to put excise tax on these products would take crossing 3 or 4 different code sections. And out of an abundance of caution to them, we've decided that that would be part of this study this summer, not just on the products themselves and the safety and the verification, but we'll also be looking at the excise tax on it at that time. This only does one thing, and that's puts these into the package stores in the state.
Mr. Chairman, just a follow-up question. Again, I'm just so new to this whole issue. Is it age 21, or is there age limitation on purchasing?
You have to be 21 years of age.
21, and that's what
this doesn't change anything. It just says, and that authority is in the rules and the regs at the Department of Ag. You have to be 21 years of age.
So this doesn't stop any of the current distribution methodology. It
does
just
not
adds.
Take it out of any of the current locations. To sell a hemp-based product, you have to be licensed by the Department of Agriculture.
Yes, sir.
And in this case, not only would you have to be licensed by the Department of Revenue, by the Department of Agriculture, you'd also have to be licensed by Revenue to sell alcoholic beverages.
Oh, thank you. That answers my question.
It's a 10.
Up to 10. We haven't changed any of the levels. It's still at 10s. Number 3, Ms. Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know you just answered the question, but I need to ask because I missed it. Should this pass, it allows for excise taxes now or after the summer study committee?
It'll be after the summer, so it'll be next session. So that gives us all summer to look at this, look at the products, to look at the whole deal. Gives you time to talk to some of the more knowledgeable folks. We've worked with the Department of Agriculture. Catherine Russell has been an immense help over there about the whole issue of how they came to what they came to. Revenue can tell you about the other. Quite frankly, I regret that we had someone in attendance yesterday, a lady that runs the labs down in Macon that does the testing on this. And I talked with her afterwards, and I regret that we didn't have a chance to call her for running out of time. But I'm sure that sometime during the interim, when we're having some meetings on this, she was quite the eye-opener about a lot of the misunderstandings and the things about these drinks. So at that time, number 28.
Oh, that'd be just at the proper time, I'll make a motion.
All right, let's see, do we have any other questions from any of the committee members? Well, if not, this is the proper time.
I'll make a motion to pass.
We have a motion. We have a second. Do we have any further questions, any discussion?
Let's drink and get high.
And I want to say this before we take a vote. For all the folks who have sent the text and emails, which is probably more than I have seen on any subjects as of late, we're not banning the product. We're going to be looking at the product over the interim. And that being said, if there's no further questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and this has been a gloriously short meeting, and y'all can get on to your other business. Oh, one other thing, you'll see a samples that was brought of this product. Take these home with you. Do not open them here, because I would be under pain and suffering from the Speaker's office of daring to have entice something on the premise. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.